Welcome, welcome to New Perspective series, and we started this webinar dedicated to the soul and its evolutionary journey, part 2, the growth and development of the psychic being. Today's topic is the soul's Swabhava and its expression in life by Radhe. Radhe is the executive director of La Grace, Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center, a spiritual retreat in Fountain Inn, South Carolina. She holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and has spent over 2 decades in the financial services industry in senior management positions. Radhe is professionally trained in Ayurveda and a graduate of Dr. Lad's Ayurvedic Institute and related Pune Gurukula program. She is also schooled in Vedic astrology and author of several books in Jyotisha and Ayurveda, the divine forces of the lunar nakshatras and the integration Ayurveda and Vedic astrology. There is something within us that yearns for expression and growth, says Radhe. It is Swabhava that rises from the innermost, deepest existence of our being, our soul. It's what we claim in with as the line of development we chose when we took birth. This inner yearning is the sincere aspiration of the soul to express and develop and grow in experience. So, without further ado, I request Radhe to address the audience. Please, Radhe.
Thank you, Vladimir, for that introduction, and thank everyone for joining us this morning for New Perspectives. As Vladimir mentioned, today's topic is the soul's Swabhava and its expression in life, which is one of my favorite subjects to speak on. In essays on the Gita, Sri Aurobindo dedicates an entire chapter to this subject of Swabhava and Swadharma. And it's an amazing chapter with a very deep perspective on this topic. And so today what I'd like to do is share parts of this chapter with you. I have several quotes from it. So anywhere where you do not see kind of a quote with the listed source on the PowerPoint, it's from this chapter. My thought today is that I'll start with just clarifying a bit as to what Swabhava is and how it differs from Swadharma. And in describing Swabhava, Sri Aurobindo explains, as Vladimir just mentioned, that there are 4 major lines of development that a soul will choose in any particular lifetime. So we'll explore each of these major lines of development, and I'll provide some examples of how each expresses in our outer life through particular job positions, careers, team participation, even family within the family unit. And then lastly, I'll just be sharing a few additional points regarding Swabhava of the soul. So with that, let me go ahead and screen share. Make sure I've got the right screen, and just let me know if you can see that. Yes?
Yes, you can see.
Okay. So we'll start with kind of this outer being, which is the ego-bound self and the mind, the heart, the life force, and the body, which we know organizes around the ego and is collectively what we consider as who we are, what our personality is like, what defines our personality. And this outer self is kind of the center of gravity where we typically will operate and function and relate to others in the world most of our lives, right? And as we all know, it includes the mind, its mental preferences, its judgments, its beliefs. It includes the heart, its desires, its likes and dislikes. the life force, our self-assertion, our vital self-will, kind of our own sense of might and accomplishments, and of course the body, its impulses, its habits, its mechanical routines and urges. And all this makes up the outer being, which ends up being rather unrefined and certainly intermixed. And we see its expressions of qualities such as insincerity, meekness, unsettledness, doubt and uncertainty, and so on. These are the egocentric expressions of the mother's 12 qualities as shown in the outer circle, rather than the soul-centric qualities actually represented in her symbol. In Letters on Yoga, Sri Aurobindo explains to Dip Kumar Roy, this little mind, vital, and body, which we call ourselves, is only a surface movement and not ourself at all. It is an external bit of personality, equipped with an ignorant mind, stumbling about in search of fragments of truth, an ignorant vital rushing about in search of fragments of pleasure, an obscure and mostly subconscious physical receiving the impacts of things and suffering rather than possessing a resultant pain or pleasure. All that is accepted until the mind gets disgusted and starts looking about for the real truth of itself and things. The vital gets disgusted and begins wondering if there is not such a thing as real bliss. And the physical gets tired and wants liberation from itself, its pains and pleasures. Then it is possible for the little ignorant bit of personality to get back to its real self, and with it to these greater things. And so, as Sri Aurobindo says, when this little ignorant bit of personality gets back to its real self, and with it to greater things, then this egocentric outer being is transformed into a soul-centric self. And what was a narrow mind kind of stumbling about for fragments of truth, it transforms. The mind transforms into an instrument that's actually capable of seeking higher truths and wisdom and self and world knowledge. And the heart that was searching for satisfactions, pleasures, desires, it transforms into an instrument capable of finding lasting joy and love and harmony. The self-assertion and personal effort of the life force in pursuit of accomplishments transforms into an instrument capable of progress and effective power. And the body, with all its imperfections and its mechanical routines and instincts, well, it now transforms into an instrument of beauty and perfection and form, and its actions are offered in service to others. So this is when the mind and the heart and the life force in the body now becomes refined and unmixed instruments for the expression of the soul qualities and a vehicle for the 12 qualities of the mother as seen in this outer circle. Sri Aurobindo was once asked, how did all this come to be? How is it that the soul, whose purpose is really to lord over nature, right? How did it become not the lord of nature? How did it become anisha and at the mercy of the ego? So Sri Aurobindo explains that often at the beginning, the soul isn't developed enough and instead becomes fully encased in the veil of ignorance of this outer being and fully identified with it. So instead of being the lord of nature, it becomes a puppet or servant to the nature, and it doesn't really recognize its own true nature, position, and authority. And so the soul becomes the tool, the servant of the bodily functions, and the same with the life force, with the emotions, with the mind. It identifies with each of them. It really forgets, he says, that it is different from them and much greater and stronger. But eventually, the psychic evolves and begins to separate itself from this outer personality. It stands back, if you will, from nature as a witness. And from this poise of the witness, or Shakshi, it further evolves and begins to sanction nature's actions. It becomes Anumata, the consenter. And as Anumata, the psychic now starts to direct nature in the transformation of the outer being into a proper instrument for the expression of its true purpose in life. It's Swabhava. So let's take a look at how Sri Aurobindo defines Swabhava, and again, how he distinguishes it from Swadharma. So Sri Aurobindo says, first, all action must be determined from within, because each man has in himself something of his own, some characteristic principle and inborn power that creates the dynamic form of his soul in nature. So this is Swabhava, right? A characteristic principle and inborn power that creates the dynamic form of his soul in nature. And then he continues, and to express and perfect it by action, to make it effective in capacity and conduct and life is his work, his true karma. So this is Swadharma, to express one's Swabhava through work and outer action. And he concludes, this is the right starting point for his further development. And in a separate quote, in further defining, Sri Aurobindo says, each of us has a principle and will of our own becoming. Each soul is a force of self-consciousness that formulates an idea of the divine in it and guides by that its action and evolution, its progressive self-finding, its constant varying self-expression, its apparently uncertain but secretly inevitable growth to fullness. That is our Swabhava, our own real nature. That is our truth of being, which is finding now only a constant partial expression in our various becomings in the world. The law of action determined by this Swabhava is our right law of self-shaping, function, and working. It's our Swadharma. So Swabhava is this inward spiritual principle and force of the soul. It's, as Sri Aurobindo says here, our real nature and the truth of our being. And Swadharma is its outward play, its outward expression through activities, through relationships, through our interests, through our studies. And Swabhava, if we look at what it translates into, Swa means own or self, and Bhava is more of a state or mood of becoming. So Swabhava is the soul's state of self-becoming, or we could say a state of self-evolution. And the soul chooses its Swabhava in any particular lifetime, a specific line of development that's consistent with this inner nature, with its inner temperament, if you will, of which Sri Aurobindo describes as four possible Swabhavas. So let's take a look at these four lines of the Swabhavas. So, and as you can see, as we go through this, these four major lines of soul development are represented by the four Mahashaktis of the inner petals of the mother's symbol. So Sri Aurobindo says, each psychic possesses in its spiritual nature a fourfold presence of the divinity. A soul of self-knowledge and world knowledge, this is Maheshwari. A soul of strength and power that seeks for and finds and uses its powers, this is Mahakali. A soul of mutuality and creation and relation and interchange between creature and creature, Mahalakshmi. And a soul of works that labors in the universe and serves all and each and turns the labor of each to the service of others, Mahasaraswati. But one side or another predominates in any one lifetime. So again, here we have the four major lines of soul development, the four Swabhavas: Maheshwari for knowledge, Mahakali for power, Mahalakshmi for harmony and mutuality, and Mahasaraswati, perfection of the body and action and being of service. And if you notice, each line of soul development aligns with the evolution and aligns with kind of this perfection of an outer part of our being. And also we can see it also aligns perhaps with a higher spiritual perspective or path of development. So for example, if we look at knowledge, right? Knowledge, which is Maheshwari, knowledge is the refinement of the mind, right? And we could say from a spiritual perspective that the path might be one of Jnana Yoga or self-enlightenment, knowledge of our true external self. And mutuality and harmony, right? Mahalakshmi, refinement of the heart. So mutuality is about relationships. And from a spiritual perspective, its emphasis is on developing a relationship with the divine or bhakti yoga. And then Mahakali, the strength and power, is the development of our life force. And we could say this is the path of tapasya, the intensification and focus of our personal willpower, which can then be surrendered to the divine will. And lastly, Mahasaraswati, works of labor or service through the body's physical actions. And of course, this is the path of karma yoga, all actions performed on behalf of the divine. So here, the 12 qualities that surround these 4 inner petals of the mother symbols are the transformative agents that are aligned with these 4 Swabhavas. And these 4 great powers or Mahashaktis, oftentimes, the way that I look at these and initially try to explain them is to explain them as to what they are in their origin. In their origin, they are these 4 great powers of creation in the supermind. In the supermind, they present the single unified force. But for the purpose of creation, they separate into 4 streams of power, and they give birth to the worlds and continue to create and build up and support everything here. So I thought it would be helpful to walk through first the nature of each of these Mahashaktis, her powers and her personalities, and how that particular Mahashakti, the role that she plays in creation. And then with this in mind, we'll start to consider how each also represents a particular line of soul development or Swabhava. So we'll start with Maheshwari, who is always the first. Her power is knowledge, awareness of everything. So Sri Aurobindo says she is all-knowing, she is all-containing, she's all-comprehending. She holds the vision and knowledge for the entire universe creation and what that creation should look like, how it ought to unfold, what the results will be. So knowledge and vision, this is Maheshwari's power. And she's vast, all-knowing, wide, right? Holding the space where creation is going to unfold. You know, Sri Aurobindo actually gives a movement to each of these Mahashaktis. And he explains that the movement of for Maheshwari is one of wideness, right? Because she's holding this entire space from which creation will manifest. And once it manifests, she holds the entire space for which it will continue to unfold and evolve. Mahakali, so if Maheshwari is the power of knowledge and vision of creation, then we have Mahakali, which is the power to execute on this vision. So with her power and strength, Mahakali breaks through barriers. She overcomes all resistances to begin the manifestation of Maheshwari's vision. So in effect, what she's doing is activating, right? She activates Maheshwari's knowledge into this dynamic movement, without which, right, knowledge would be unmanifest. And you'll notice as we go through this that the sequence of these 4 Mahashaktis are for a reason, right? For example, here power, Mahakali, as it plays out, it must emerge from knowledge. Right? Without knowledge, well, it's going to be a blind power, a power without knowledge. And I always equate this to like a bull in a china shop, you know, kind of wild, undirected, destructive. But power with knowledge, which is what Mahakali represents, is effective power. And in terms of her movement, Sri Aurobindo says, Mahakali is of another nature than Maheshwari. not of wideness, but of height. Not wisdom, but force and strength are her peculiar power. There is an overwhelming intensity, a mighty passion of force to achieve, a divine violence rushing to shatter every limit and obstacle. So her movement is height. It's this height of force. You can think, I always consider like a fire, an intense fire, and going straight up and pointed and focused in its heat and in its direction. And then Mahalakshmi comes in. And as Mahakali's force, right, it's going to start this whole process of creation, which is no small task, right? It's very complex, it's huge, and it's required to execute Maheshwari's vision. But there's this third power that we need. And Sri Aurobindo says it's a power of mutuality, which is going to put all things in their right relation. It's in effect going to harmonize this force of Mahakali's. So this is Mahalakshmi's power. She draws and holds things and beings together so that they can meet and unite in harmony. And what this requires? Well, it requires order and organization. When everything is in its right place and in the right time, right, it results in a harmonious whole. So just like in our universe, if you look at our solar system, right, each planet has its own orbit and nature, but all planets are being held together as a single harmonious universe with the sun as its center. So there's order and a rhythm to our universe. And this is Mahalakshmi, the ordering of various forces of Mahakalis for the purpose of harmony and right relations. So we saw that Maheshwari's movement is wideness, all-containing, and Mahakali's is height, energy rising up to form this real intense flame of focused, intentional power. Mahalakshmi's movement is all-embracing. She's holding everything together in her embrace in such a way that results in order and harmony in right relations. And then lastly, we come to Mahasaraswati. Sri Aurobindo says that Mahasaraswati is equipped with her close and profound capacity of intimate knowledge and careful, flawless work and quiet and exact perfection in all things. So with her power of perfection, each form in creation is completed down to the last detail. She demands thoroughness, perfection, faultless elaboration of detail. Every last element is attended to in order to manifest the perfect form of the previous three powers. And Sri Aurobindo says that she is the youngest of the four and the nearest to the physical nature because she is the one that ultimately must manifest here in nature the knowledge, the power, and harmony, which will create a lasting beauty and form. In terms of her movement, although Sri Aurobindo is not specific to this, but her movement that I see is one of self-extending. She extends herself to the object she creates. So if you think of maybe an artist, right? An artist who pours herself into her paintings. She kind of becomes an extension. Her painting becomes an extension of who she is. Right, so she's extending herself, or a writer. You can also think of a writer who becomes the actors in his story. And in this way, Mahasaraswati extends herself to each object that she creates so that it can be created perfectly. And it's the same self-extending, which is also to others. Being of service to others is part of Mahasaraswati's power. So you can think of her as sort of the humanitarian in action. So as we consider these four great powers, who again is one in the supermind, there's a couple things to notice. First of all, if we think of any project that we've been involved with, or any initiative, or anything that we've created, right, for it to be effective, for it to be successful, it had to have all four powers. There had to be an element of knowledge, an element of force, mutuality or harmony, and perfection. right? And the second thing is that there is a particular sequence that's required, right? The same sequence that we just saw for creation. First, there has to be knowledge. Then there has to be the impetus to put that knowledge into action. And then mutuality to harmonize the forces. And then perfection, coming down to the final details. So something of beauty could be made in form. So with this as a backdrop, we can now consider how each Mahashakti represents one of the four main lines of development for the soul, or the Swabhava. And as we go through each, you might want to consider which Swabhava you feel is your soul lines of development. So we'll start with Maheshwari, who's knowledge. So this is someone with the Swabhava of knowledge, and this person is going to have a deep appreciation and aspiration for knowledge, right? She's going to look for knowledge, seek knowledge in any area she's involved with. And it doesn't matter what line of profession she's engaged in. So research, new possibilities, new paradigms, looking beyond accepted knowledge and traditions. These are the hallmark features of the person of knowledge. The person whose Swabhava is Maheshwari's knowledge. And so its knowledge is more important than application. Sort of focus more on the why instead of the how. And each of these Mahashaktis bring a joy to the person. For Maheshwari, her joy or happiness comes from the discovery of new truths and new knowledge and new ways of looking at things. It's pretty easy sometimes. You'll see people of knowledge, any one of these, oftentimes it's very easy to know relatively quickly what their soul Swabhava is, especially if it's very, very focused on one. As we'll talk about later, sometimes the soul Swabhava includes, although there's a major line of development, as Sri Aurobindo says, it puts to use the other Swabhavas also. And so sometimes in that situation, it's a little bit more difficult, but we can talk about some ways to kind of think more deeply about your soul Swabhava at the end here. I just put together maybe a couple examples that come to mind. If we look at the medical field as somebody who's maybe a doctor, so here the person would probably not be doing surgery, probably not be organizing, not the COO, but maybe drawn to research and discovering new cures, right, for the latest diseases. Because again, this research and discovery is important. And in the business field, I see this person involved in new business ideas and someone that's setting the vision and the business strategy, or in any division in a company that requires some level of discovery of knowledge and research and generation of ideas. So these are just a couple examples. But what's important to notice is that a soul Swabhava, and in this case, we're saying knowledge, it can be expressed through any field of endeavor, right? Doesn't matter what field it's in, but it must have these underlying qualities of knowledge and discovery for this Swabhava. So let's go to Mahakali, effective force. So remember, Mahakali executes Maheshwari's knowledge, and she's all about breaking through barriers and overcoming resistances and moving things forward, right? She is this impetus that's needed for launching any new projects or initiatives. And she is the Shakti that keeps the project moving forward at all costs. So for this person with Mahakali, or effective force as a Swabhava, there must be action, must be, of course, power. Oftentimes adventure is included, and of course there's got to be a challenge, got to be something to overcome. And so wherever she is, right, she's going to look for what? Problems. She's going to look for challenges, because this is what she needs to do. She wants to accomplish things that require breaking through certain barriers, and she wants to accomplish things that may to many people seem impossible. That's the challenge that she rises to. And so this sense of progress, moving forward, breaking through barriers is essential. I know for this particular person, staying in one place too long, not having enough challenges can be very, very torturous. They tend to sink into boredom and despair or start to look for other means of expression. And there is, for Mahakali, there's often this corresponding need for leadership supported by courage, and because there's this great reserve of energy for new endeavors. So it's her strong Shakti that makes things happen. And I would say Mahakali's joy or happiness, therefore, comes from achieving certain goals and pulling off seemingly impossible projects, right? And I often see this person will respond very well in environments where there's constant fire drills, right? And if you look at various, go back to the medical field as a doctor, so maybe she's not doing the research or discovering new cures like Maheshwari was, but maybe she's drawn to performing impossible surgeries, right? Maybe transplanting limbs or organs or brain surgery because she needs a challenge, right? Now, obviously, these type of things also are going to bring in Mahalakshmi and Mahasaraswati, but this idea of doing something impossible in the medical field. And in the business field, well, I was thinking, she may not be focused on vision and strategy, but she might be the one that's responsible for taking a company out of bankruptcy, right? Maybe the company failed, and now, against all odds, in comes the Mahakali person, and she not only revives the company, right, but then she strives to bring new life into the company and then take it to new heights. This is Mahakali, always pushing ahead, always forward march. And as I said, she really thrives in environments where there's either fire drills or risk-taking environments. So this can also be your entrepreneur. In the Gita, Sri Aurobindo adds qualities like heroism, high spirit, not fleeting in battle, providing lordship, providing some sort of leadership. And Mahalakshmi. So her power of harmony, right, puts all things in their right relations. And when everything is in perfect alignment and organized as a whole, then things happen effortlessly, flawlessly, and most important, efficiently. So we normally may not think of Mahalakshmi as that movement of efficiency or being efficient, but it's very much part of her power of bringing everything together in the right place, in the right time, and in this case, most efficiently also. So she's the organizer and the harmonizer in any endeavor. And her need is to find harmony, to find balance, again, the right timing in everything that's done. She has a knack for marshaling required resources and employing them in right distribution across all functions. This is what Sri Aurobindo describes as fair distribution, one of her powers. And it's in this way that she's able to achieve not only harmony, but also integration and also efficiency. And you probably can spot these individuals fairly easy because there's also normally this ability of compelling others to unite and work together towards common goals. And there's also another expression of this Swabhava, it's mutual helpfulness to others. The mutual helpfulness we'll see is a little bit different than Mahasaraswati. Mahalakshmi, I was thinking about all the fires that took place last year in the Northwest. And what Mahalakshmi, it would be the person who organized and planned how best to get the clothes and the food and the shelter to those displaced. So it's mutual helpfulness to others, really from the perspective of using her organizational skills and her ability to bring together the right resources. She wouldn't necessarily be the one that's out in the field personally assisting those displaced. This would be, as we will see, Mahasaraswati. And so her joy, as you can imagine, comes from seeing everything and everyone working together in unison and harmony and efficiently. Right. And I'm mentioning this joy or the happiness that each of these bring, because oftentimes in order to determine or discover or uncover one's Swabhava, it helps to think about what is it in life, what is it, let's say in previous jobs, that has really brought joy and happiness to you, right? What sort of, is it discovery and knowledge, right? Or is it going to be more this harmony and mutuality? Or is it forward progress and leadership and courage? So this will help you kind of determine your Swabhava. And I thought, you know, in the medical field, this would be your COO. This would be the chief operating officer who's got to organize the work of the departments, marshal all the necessary resources to keep the hospital operational and efficient. In Essays on the Gita, Sri Aurobindo adds that the temperament of this Swabhava is one who is moved to production and wealth gathering. So we also see, if we think of the ancient Varnic system, we also see this as being qualities of the Vaishya. And then we can move to Mahasaraswati. So here Sri Aurobindo says she is the science and craft and technique of things. So remember, she had this intimate and precise knowledge of things down to the last detail, and unending patience, Sri Aurobindo says. Now, this is something that Mahakali may not be as proficient in. Mahakali's moving things forward, getting things done. Here, Mahasaraswati has total patience and dedication to the details of whatever it is that she's involved with. So she is careful. Sri Aurobindo says she's a careful, efficient builder, technician, or artisan. And her action is laborious and minute, and often seems through our impatience to be slow, but it is persistent, integral, and flawless. So here we have the person of skill and craft with, again, this requirement of attention to detail, perfection, flawless work, and the ability of being able to labor until it's perfect, having this discipline, this patience to achieve perfection. And just as she gives herself to completely, really, to a craft or a skill or an object, the same self-giving, right, the same generosity or self-extending that we spoke about before, she extends to others. So here, being in service to others is important to her. And I would say her joy comes from either helping others and or through perfection. You know, right away, what comes to my mind when I think about Mahasaraswati as a Swabhava, that it's the person maybe who desire to be of service may draw her into maybe becoming a member of the Red Cross, right? And here she's out in the field, right? She's leading a helping hand to those less advantaged. Not Mahalakshmi, that still may be a member of the Red Cross, but she's organizing and gathering the necessary resources. And again, as Sri Aurobindo described, she's also the craftsman, the artist, the writer. So, you know, in many ways, this is the most difficult and yet important Swabhava, Mahasaraswati, because what Sri Aurobindo says that she is the manifester in form of the other three Shaktis. She must have the knowledge, she must have the power, she must have the harmony to create something perfect. And if we think about it, this is really the Mahashakti that is most needed in this time as we think about this crucial time of transition and this divinization of matter, this making heaven on earth. This is something that Saraswati is responsible for, because she's got to have all final three, and she's got to be able to manifest. She has to be able to work with nature. So one thing that we know intuitively is that it's very important that we follow our own Swabhava. Sri Aurobindo and the Gita emphasizes this importance with a couple quotes here that I'd like to read. He says, "But a work not naturally one's own, even though it may be well performed, even though it may look better from the outside when judged by an external and mechanical standard, or may lead to more success in life, is still inferior as a means of subjective growth precisely because it has an external motive and a mechanical impulsion. One's own natural work is better, even if it looks from some other point of view defective. One does not incur sin or stain when one acts in the true spirit of the work and in agreement with the law of one's own nature. So there is no karma that results from it when we work in this, our true spirit of work and in engagement with the law of one's own nature. Action should be rightly regulated action, but intrinsically one's own, evolved from within, in harmony with the truth of one's being, regulated by the Swabhava. Swabhava Nityam Karma. And then the second quote from Essays on the Gita: death in one's own law of nature is better for a man than victory in an alien movement. Right? Death in one's own law of nature is better for a man than victory in an alien movement. So to follow the law of another's nature is dangerous to the soul, contradictory, as we may say, to the natural way of his evolution, a thing mechanically imposed and therefore imported, artificial, sterilizing to one's growth towards the true statue of spirit. So I wanted to make just a couple more comments on Swabhava, something I think important when we try to understand it, and when we look at sort of our own nature, our own things we've been drawn to, and wonder about what our Swabhava may be. Swabhava expresses itself, Sri Aurobindo says, through nature in accordance with the three gunas. So here he's quotes, Swabhava means one thing in the highest spiritual nature, right? That's kind of what we've been looking at, kind of true expression of an underlying Swabhava. But he says it takes quite another form and significance in the lower nature of the three gunas, right? Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So there too it acts, but is not in full possession of itself, is seeking, as it were, for its own true law in a half-lit or a half-light or darkness, and goes on its way through many lower forms, many false forms, endless imperfections, perversions, self-losing, self-findings, seekings after norm and rule before it arrives at self-discovery and perfection. So it's important to know that, one of the reasons it may be difficult for us to understand what our Swabhava may be by looking at our outer actions, our outer paths through career and what have you, is that we're human. We're still operating around the ego most of the time. And so in nature, what's up? These three gunas, they're going to, Swabhava will have to express in this lower qualities of nature, sattva, rajas, and tamas, right? Or some mix. It's oftentimes a mixture of all. And so just by way of example, look at right, this person knowledge. So maybe a tamasic, we could have a person whose Swabhava is in fact knowledge, but maybe it's operating in nature through more the tamas guna. And so a tamasic expression of this might be the person who is more rigid with knowledge, right? Not bending, kind of stuck to their own right thinking or right knowing. So actually, at the end of the day, becoming closed to new knowledge, almost the opposite of what you would think. This is one way that it can be expressed through the guna of tamas. And if we look more at a rajasic movement or expression, the person here, I can see that perhaps the person of knowledge is constantly shifting their knowledge base. Today it's this, tomorrow it's that, next day it's this again, whatever's popular, whatever everybody else is seeing or what they're hearing on TV or YouTube. The mind for the rajasic expression, and this is a bit of an extreme example, but just to get the point across, the mind is not necessarily steady nor firm in its grasp of knowledge, right? And it just tends to bend like the wind to whatever currently is popular. So you can do this exercise with each Swabhava and kind of see that most often we are expressing it through a lower guna or a combination of gunas. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, and I mentioned this before briefly, but Sri Aurobindo says in any one life, one side, one Swabhava or other predominates in the action and expression of the soul. Yet this leading power of the soul gives a stamp to the other powers and uses them for the principal strain of action, tendency, and experience. So we do have one major Swabhava, but it doesn't mean that we're not using the other powers or we're not exploring and integrating and developing these others. But there'll be one major line of development. And of course, ultimately, we are integral people, and the objective is to fully develop our potential through fully developing all four Swabhavas. So Sri Aurobindo was asked if there were other powers than these four. And he tells us that there are other powers and personalities of the divine Shakti, of the supermind. But he says they were more difficult to bring down, and they haven't stood out in front with as much prominence in this evolution of the earth spirit. And among them, he says there is one that is particularly indispensable for the divine realization. And this is her personality of Ananda, which flows from her divine love. But Sri Aurobindo says that until we develop these other four, she will not be as prominent. And although she's not as prominent, she's still supporting at all times from behind all these other powers of the universe. But he says it alone, the Ananda, which flows from the divine love, it alone can heal the wide gulf between spirit and matter. And this rare power will be available once we're able to perfect these other four Mahashaktis. Once we're able to transform the mind, Maheshwari, our willpower, Mahakali, the heart, Mahalakshmi, and the physical body, Mahasaraswati. So in closing, I wanted to circle back to the mother symbol and also at the same time take a look at Sri Aurobindo's symbol. So we've seen the mother symbol here. It represents the integral development of the soul, right? And the unfolding of one's full potential through these four lines of soul development, or Mahashaktis. This is symbolized by the four inner petals, Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati. And we said at the origin, these four great powers are the powers of the supermind, right? So these four inner petals represent the perfect manifestation here on earth, made possible by the supermind. And of course, the lotus in the center, it's Mahashakti, the divine mother. And then if we look at Sri Aurobindo's symbol, so there's a downward pointing triangle, Satchitananda. This is the transcendental realm, right, above the supermind. And the overlapping upward triangle, life, light, and love, which represents matter's aspiration or call for divinization. And what unites these two triangles, what unites the transcendental realm with earth, it's the square in the middle, which Mother says represents the perfect manifestation made possible only by the descent of the supermind. So the square also represents the supermind. And the lotus within is of the square, of course, it's Sri Aurobindo as the avatar. And as we overlap these two, put these two symbols together, well, something very interesting happens, right? Notice that the four inner petals of the mother's symbol, which again represents the powers of the supermind, fits perfectly into the square of Sri Aurobindo's symbol, which represents the same. And also overlapping are the center lotuses, representing the mother and Sri Aurobindo. So the two avatars who have come together for the sole purpose of divinizing nature, for the purpose of transforming earth into heaven, through the descent of the supramental consciousness. And the 12 soul qualities encircle Sri Aurobindo's six-pointed star. Right? These are the qualities of the new divine creation: sincerity, humility, gratitude, perseverance, aspiration, progress, courage, goodness, generosity, equality, and peace. So the two, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, the divine Purusha and his Mahashakti, descend as avatars to assist in the birth of a new creation. This is the meaning of their combined system symbols. And in conclusion of this brief talk on Swabhava, and just to eliminate any anxiety that may exist around not being able perhaps to know right away what one's soul line of development is, and to make it ease any uncertainty, that we may not know what our Swabhava is, I would like to leave you with a short prayer from the Mother. Let me do what you want me to do. Let me know what you want me to know. Let me be what you want me to be. This is all that's needed at the end of the day. So thank you very much for staying with me through this presentation. And if you have any questions, be happy to answer them. And
thank you, Radha,
thank you,
so
Abhinav,
much.
very much.
Yes, if there are questions, you can see them and read them to others, and so answer them. Yeah, please.
Yep. Just see Abhinav. Thank you, Abhinav, for your comment. It wasn't a question; it was just a thank you. Thank you so much. The other thing too that I wanted to mention, because we've been working with these Swabhavas and these four Mahashaktis here at La Grace for some time. These 12 qualities and four Mahashaktis are really the foundation of the work that we do here at La Grace. And so Vladimir and I have been working and giving very specific workshops on Swabhavas, as well as each of these 12 qualities for the last, 3 or 4 years. And I know, Vladimir, you've been working with them for many, many years while you were in Auroville. But one of the things when we were giving a workshop on Swabhava is we kind of reflected on what are some of the ways that we might be able to discover our own Swabhava. And we came up with a couple examples that I would just like to share. You might find them helpful for you. One of the ways, this is, I think, what you had suggested, Vladimir, was that if you think back in your childhood, right, before you had a lot of influence from your parents or teachers or your social circle, was there something that you really yearned to do? Was there something very specific? Were you looking for knowledge? Or were you looking for, let's say, harmony or friendship? Right? If you look at, it's hard because I remember one of my earliest things was I want to be a teacher. Well, a teacher is a field of expression. It's not a Swabhava. You'd have to look behind the teacher. What are you going to teach? What is the subject matter? Right? Are you teaching philosophy or maybe religions of the world? This would be more of Maheshwari. Or are you teaching, how to be a life coach? Right? Here we would be Mahalakshmi, etc. So it's easy to get the two confused. But if you go back before you were ever kind of influenced by others outside and think about if there was a particular yearning, this may help you uncover your Swabhava. And I think the other thing, well, there's a couple others that I'll mention. The other thing is, especially if we've had 3 or 4 careers or professions, to look back and see if you can find sort of the thread that holds those various professions together. Right? And see if you ended up really tending to be in positions of knowledge or positions of leadership or positions of really helping others and perfection. And this takes a little bit. So believe me, it doesn't always click overnight, but if you give it some thought and reflection. The third way, which is also very helpful, is if you've ever been in teams, which we've all been, think about the role you play. If you've been in teams at work or in your community or in your social circle, which role do you naturally gravitate towards, right? And this can also reveal to you your Swabhava. Okay, let me see. There is another. Dan Raj, thank you. How can we translate this into actions to discovering our own Swabhava? So these are some examples. Here's the other thing too. You know, sometimes we're a little too close to it, and we want to believe we're one thing, or really another. So we can ask somebody that's a little bit more objective, but somebody that knows us. You know, I know this was a big help for me because I thought I was one thing, and talking through with Vladimir, he's like, no, this is what you want. And then after reflection, I thought, oh my gosh, absolutely right. So sometimes we kind of see ourselves in one way, but having somebody objective to provide that input or insight can be of great help. Oops, sorry, there's other questions.
Thank you so much. And maybe someone from the panel also has some question or some, observations on this profound topic to define one's own, nature, to discover that drive, which drives us to do things in a particular way, in a particular, flavor. We are looking for some delight from existence, which we need for our experience, and that we gather from what we do, the manner how we do it, rather. Not what, but how we do things. Yes, so that defines our most probably need to fulfill our Swabhava. So, would you like to share some thoughts?
Yeah, excellent presentation, really enlightening, insightful, and really awaken how to, now is a workshop that we have to do homework to find our own Swabhava and then create the action through Swadharma. So excellent presentation. I am also enlightened by whatever I read. This gets more clarity in a PPT point of view. So it's clear our mind and have a relationship of different Shaktis and how they operate and how they connect with each other, one in sequence and together at the end. Excellent. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, HP. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhe. That was an excellent presentation. I learned a lot about Swabhava, especially the differences between Swabhava, Swadharma, and the 4 kinds of Mahashaktis. It's a very profound topic, and I really need to go deeper into it and understand it much more. But thank you. At this point, no questions. I'm really in awe of the vastness of the topic and the subject. It requires a lot of work, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jayashree. And I do see a couple more questions here. We have another couple minutes. Hi, James. How are you? So nice that you can join us.
I just wanted to extend my gratitude for that session. It was really beautiful. It's really quite a complex tapestry that you've presented, and trying to sort of unearth your own individual tendency in life is really quite difficult to trace, because we are all a mixture.
Absolutely.
A mixture of different tendencies, and particularly on our lower side, we're all a mixture. And I can see myself in various 4 of those Mahashaktis, but thank you very much.
Thank you, James. So glad you can join us. Been nice. James gave a presentation on this topic several weeks ago, which is on our knowledge bank. And as you know, Jayashree did so last week. So all of these in this series is on our knowledge bank and available. Maybe I'll just take 1 or 2 other questions. David, can one have more than one Swabhava? For example, if we start with one, but as we evolve, we take on other Swabhavas. So, Sri Aurobindo says that the soul comes in with one particular line of development. But Sri Aurobindo also says that the soul has total freedom. So if in the course of one life it decides to shift and develop a second one, or if it completes, which takes quite many lifetimes to do, it may also shift. So absolutely, we can switch. The soul can switch from one to another, but what you might actually end up seeing if you look back through your careers or your professions, because that's where it's easiest to see, is that what it's doing is it's staying with one main line of development, but it's now bringing in much more force and prominence a second and sometimes a third, rather than a complete shift. But again, the soul is free to do whatever it chooses in this lifetime. Sometimes the line of work defines Swabhava. It can be the line of work, depends what you mean by the line of work, because this is where it gets kind of confusing, is that our work is the field of expression, right? So you could be, we gave the example, you could go to medical school, be a medical doctor, and yet depending, right, on from there very specific positions that you hold or types of roles that you tend to play within the team, you could be one of any four of those. So if you're talking more specifically down to the nature of the work or the nature of the position, we're looking at the qualities behind and not necessarily the outcome. But yes, I think if that's what you're speaking is more the qualities that come through a particular line of work that you follow. I mean, I was in the financial services industry for 30 years. And I changed companies twice and position maybe 10, 15 times. And still, through that position itself, the industry, and through the different shifts in positions, that same thing came through. And as I look at today as being director of LaGrasse, I see that same line of work being done. So yes, it can definitely be. And sometimes, you kind of switch for 4 or 5 or 6 years. You're really just developing a second one to help boost maybe that main line of development. But even then, when I took a break of 5 or 6 years, I could see the thread continuing. So yes, I believe so. Okay, maybe we'll just take one more here. Stacy, hi, Stacy. Can what comes naturally or feels effortless point you in the right? Absolutely. So not to overthink it or over plan it. Things that just naturally unfold, things that start to become synchronistic in your life. It's all coming spontaneous without calculating. It's all coming, what we would say, sincerely. And so this is the one quality that allows most, of most, the Swabhava to come out, is sincerity. So natural, effortless, uncalculated. Absolutely. So I think we're a little bit over. If it's okay, I think we'll go ahead and close, Vladimir, unless there's something that you would like to say.
Oh, thank you so much. There are more, of course, questions. This is a not finished topic to define one's own Swabhava, where you belong and what you're looking for in life is a central question. Once we know that, once we really feel that presence within us, we can fulfill our life in any field of endeavor. It doesn't matter what we do, it matters what we are looking for, what experience we are looking for, and how we want to realize ourselves. It's a very beautiful presentation, which is defining Swabhava as something separate from the profession or field of action, because field of action can be any, but we can see it in our life that the same difficulties come to us all the time, wherever we were. So we could be married several times, but the same difficulty comes back because we have to fulfill something in life which we have to define. It's on the same line of thinking. So there is something central in us which we are looking for and we want to find through activities. And if we find that, then our Swadharma could be realized. And we could fulfill much more and progress much faster than we without knowing it. So this is the value of your presentation, and we are all very grateful for this, and thank you so much.
And if all else fails, let me do what you want me to do, right?
Right.
Let me know what you want me to know. Let me be what you want me to be. Simple prayer that we can all repeat. Thank you all so very much. And we will see you. One more topic or webinar in this series will be next Sunday. Kashyapa will talk about Ayurveda's perspective on the soul. So hope you can join us. Namaste.
Namaste.